The Josh Gattis departure buzz is heating up, but can we separate the rumor from reality?
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, your host. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. So more and more rumors and discussions are happening about whether or not offensive coordinator Josh Gattis is going to return for the 2023 season. So here's the latest that's being talked about. And I'm going to tell you like what's rumor versus what are we kind of actually hearing could be the case here. So now Miami Hurricanes offensive coordinator Josh Gattis, who is not very popular among Hurricanes fans right now. The offense just never really got out of the garage this past season. So now he's being linked to Iowa. But I want to throw a little bit of sand on this fire, okay? As far as the Iowa thing goes, as far as I can tell, Josh Gattis to the Iowa Hawkeyes right now, strictly rumors and speculation at this point. It is being talked about on Iowa radio and on their 24/7 message boards, their recruiting boards and all that. And I think one of the reasons why Gattis to Iowa is starting to gain a little steam right now, at least as far as discussions go. And I'm not saying it can't happen, but here's, I think, why it's gaining so much steam right now. His former quarterback at Michigan, Cade McNamara, who we've talked about in the past few days, could he be a transfer target for Miami? I didn't really think so. And he's definitely not a target for Miami because now McNamara is transferring to Iowa. Aside from the fact that he's staying in conference and he's a Big Ten guy, it definitely raised some eyebrows. Like McNamara to Iowa, their offense has been really bad for the last couple of years. We'll talk about just how bad Iowa's offense was in the 2022 season. And so, yeah, with McNamara, who's got a really good relationship with Gattis. I mean, they worked together in 2021 when Gattis was the OC. McNamara was the Michigan quarterback, and they got to the college football playoff that year. A lot of people are saying, well, McNamara going to Iowa, maybe that means Gattis is going to Iowa. Now, as far as Josh Gattis potentially joining the Iowa Hawkeyes staff, here's the part of this rumor that I find to be a potential obstacle. So Kirk Ferentz is the head coach at Iowa. His son, Brian Ferentz, is the offensive coordinator at Iowa. So is Kirk willing to fire or more likely demote his son? Because that's the buzz that he could keep him on the staff and not outright fire him in order to bring in a new offensive coordinator. Does Kirk Ferentz have the stones to do what Mark Richt didn't do? Because this reminds me a lot of that situation because Iowa's offense is bad. The head coach's son is their offensive coordinator. Do you remember when Mark Richt's son, John Richt, was the quarterback's coach? And, every fan wanted John out, but Mark didn't want to do it. At the end of the day, Mark Richt resigned before he ever was even really faced with the opportunity to demote or let his son go. So does Kirk Ferentz have the stones to do what Mark Richt didn't? Now, I do think, and this is not Locked On Hawkeyes, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this with Iowa. It's definitely not impossible that Iowa were to bring in a new offensive coordinator and do something about Brian Ferentz because the Iowa offense this season ranked 130th in the country out of 131 teams. Miami's offense ranked 88th. So Iowa's offense was so bad. How bad were they? They were so bad that Iowa fans are actually excited about the possibility of Josh Gattis taking over their offense. That's how down Iowa's offense has been. So Josh Gattis, if something were to happen here, if he were to move on, to move somewhere else, he's obviously, I think, a better fit for Big Ten football than he is for Miami in the ACC. Power football, run heavy. He already had success at Michigan. So this would be, I think, a better fit for him on paper. And he probably knows that if that opportunity were to come up there. And yeah, the chance to reunite with a quarterback that he had success with could be an interesting fit there. Now I don't know if it's going to be Iowa if Gattis goes somewhere. I don't know if it's going to be Iowa, but it has been my sense going back to Monday of this week, based on some conversations that I've had. I do think Josh Gattis will more than likely not be back. I never thought he would be outright fired. Okay. And that's why it's taken some time here. Cause I've seen some people who are so impatient, because the season just ended like less than a week ago. And I see some people like, how has he not been fired yet? Why is Josh Gattis still here? This guy shouldn't have even been allowed to go home after the game. They should have fired him. They should have made him leave Miami at that moment. This is going to take time. If he leaves, it's going to take time because I don't think Miami's going to outright fire him. I think it's going to be one of those mutual separations or him taking another job, whether it's Iowa or something else. And honestly, if it plays out that way, where it's a mutual separation agreement or he leaves for another job, that's the best outcome for Miami, because if you fire him outright, you've got to pay a 7-figure buyout. If he leaves voluntarily and takes another job, you either potentially don't have to pay any buyout or you negotiate a significantly lower buyout than what it would be if you just can the guy. So that's what we're looking at now. If Josh Gattis were to leave, I would definitely keep an eye on recently fired UNLV head coach Marcus Arroyo. He had great success under Mario Cristobal at Oregon, was an offensive coordinator early on in Mario's tenure there. In fact, the last game that Arroyo called as OC was a Rose Bowl victory for the Ducks in 2019. So I think he and Mario have a good relationship, and he left after that to be the UNLV head coach. And that was honestly a puzzling firing. Now, his record there stunk. Okay, in 3 years they went 7-23. So yeah, the overall record was terrible there. But when he took over UNLV, that program was in the toilet. Like, they were winless when he took over. They improved every season that he was there. His final season, which was this year, they went 5-7. So they went from like 0 wins to 2 wins to 5 wins, and they still decided to fire him after that. I know that players were surprised that he was let go. So you'd have to wonder there, because he's got the history, the working relationship with Cristobal. I would definitely keep an eye on Marcus Arroyo, or maybe he'll try to find like another head coaching job at a really small school. I don't know, but if he wants to be a coordinator, if this job comes open, that could be a natural fit for him. Now, my home run hire, and I'm not saying that this would happen, but I'm saying if you're willing to invest a lot and try to get somebody who's currently doing TV, not coaching, my home run hire would be Dan Mullen. He would obviously be very expensive. Now, if Mario could hire someone like that, you would have to hand him the keys to the offense. He would have to be like an assistant or associate head coach. Let him hire his own staff. Don't micromanage the offense. You would basically he'd be like the head coach of the offense in a way if you were to make a move like that. But again, I don't. Mullen would be very expensive. He seems to be pretty happy right now doing TV. He also obviously has big time Florida Gators ties, but they did fire him. So maybe he's not that loyal where he'd be like, you know what? Why would I avoid taking the job of a rival when you guys fired me? It's like Randy Shannon. Randy Shannon was fired by Miami. He's worked for every rival of Miami over the last 15 years. So I don't know if that would be. I know some Florida fans are like, he's a Gator. He would never work for Miami. I don't know. I'm that's a pipe dream for me, obviously, on somebody like Mullen. A lot of Canes fans bring up Scott Frost. He's obviously got a really good resume, but you do a little digging there, seems to be a little baggage with Frost. I'll leave it at that. But seems like a heck of a football coach, but I don't know. Could Frank Ponce be promoted quarterbacks coach at Miami? It is possible. I thought Ponce did a really good job as the OC and play caller at Appalachian State. I get the sense Miami, if Gattis doesn't come back, would like to make a bigger splash, but Gattis was a big splash hire. That was a flashy hire. That didn't exactly work out. So maybe Miami would go a more, conservative, low-key direction here. So if Gattis were to leave and Ponce would be promoted, to offensive coordinator, I would imagine he would probably keep his quarterbacks coach title also. So he would be QB coach and offensive coordinator. And then Miami would have the opportunity to go out and get hopefully a really good wide receivers coach, because Josh Gattis is also the wide receivers coach. So if he leaves, you're losing an OC and a wide receivers coach. So if Ponce were to be promoted, and you guys can let me know if that's something you're interested in, because I know that's very polarizing. But if Ponce were to be promoted, he'd probably keep the quarterback coach title. He would add offensive coordinator, and then you go out and hopefully hire a really, really good wide receivers coach, because that's, I think, something Miami really, really needs. Okay. So that's where we're at now. Is Miami's quarterback situation, because nobody wants to leave. Could that be a sign that maybe these guys know Gattis has one foot out the door, right? Because none of these quarterbacks want to leave. They all want to be Miami Hurricanes. We will talk about the latest on the Miami Hurricanes quarterback room for the present and future when we come back here on Locked On Canes. So keep it locked. And guys, make sure you are keeping it locked to BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer. You got a big tournament going on right now. And esports, we've got you all covered at BetOnline. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. And we're going to do, guys, later on in this episode of Locked On Canes, we're going to look at some odds for the championship games this weekend at BetOnline. They are always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to their website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So Miami is not only keeping Tyler Van Dyke. Kane Sport was the first to report that TVD is going to be staying, that he's not hitting the portal. He's not testing the waters. And then a couple hours after that, Rivals, Canes County, reports that Jake Garcia is staying too. And that report is being confirmed now left and right. So the quarterback room next year is going to look a lot like the quarterback room this year. Or this past year, but with the addition of Emory Williams, the true freshman who's coming in. And I think it's good for Emory to have several veterans to learn from, right? Since, he was unlikely to be a first-year starter anyway. So it's not like Williams was going to play in 2023. And oh, by the way, when we mentioned Tyler Van Dyke staying and Jake Garcia staying, it's very understood that Jacurri Brown is also staying. Because I know his name isn't being brought up specifically, but I don't think Jacurri's going anywhere. So Jake, Tyler, and Jacurri are apparently staying, at least for now, and not transferring. And I think it's really, really good for Emory Williams coming in to have three veterans who have all started at times throughout their Miami career to be able to learn from, and hopefully to be able to learn good habits from. So I think that's a good thing for Emory Williams. Now, I just want to clear up something, because a lot of people, myself included, were a little bit surprised to see the reports that Garcia is not going to hit the portal, because I don't know, it just made too much sense, right? Because with Tyler staying, I don't really see like a clear path for Jake to be a starting quarterback, at least not this coming year. I was a little bit shocked by that, but the more you think about it, just because they're both staying right now doesn't necessarily mean they're both still here when the 2023 season starts. I would like them to be. I don't want to lose anybody, really, honestly. Now, because you got to remember, there are two windows to enter the transfer portal. The first of those is a 45-day transfer portal period that starts 3 days from now on December 5th and ends in mid-January. But let's not forget, there is another transfer portal window between May 1st and May 15th. So depending on how spring football goes, which is over by the 1st of May, it could be possible for Jake or Tyler, more likely Jake, or even both, to exit stage left after spring ball. I don't want it to happen, but I'm letting you know it can happen, right? So just because nobody's entering the portal in December doesn't mean nobody's entering the portal in May, because they may kind of want to see how, because a couple things, guys, they may want to see how things go in spring ball. Is there going to be like a real quarterback competition in spring ball, or is it just Tyler's the man? If there is a possibility that a new offensive coordinator comes in, you probably want to see what that guy's all about before you decide to transfer, because heck, a new coordinator can bring new opportunities, as we all know. So I think that's a possibility. And, I do understand that with Jake, especially, I think Tyler is locked in. I think Tyler is for sure going to be here next year. I think Jake wants probably more clarity on what his role can be here moving forward. If he might get a chance to actually compete for QB1, because I don't think that's clear yet at this time. And again, if he suspects that there could be a change in OC, Garcia may want to see how that all shakes out before he makes a final decision. So that's where we're at with the quarterback room. It's going to look pretty much the same potentially next year. And some people have said this about Emory Williams, that, he's so quiet because he's one of those, because there are certain guys that we always hear from on social media, like Ray Joseph and Robbie and Bobby Washington, Francis Mauigoa, Antonio Tripp, that are always like just going crazy how much they love being Miami Hurricanes and how bought in they are. And then there are other guys who are a little quieter, like Cormani McClain is quiet, which makes people worry. But I think in the case of Cormani, like, there is evidence of him actually trying to recruit players to Miami behind the scenes. Sometimes actions speak louder than words. And with Emory Williams, for as quiet as that dude may be, I don't hear any buzz about his recruitment being open, right? Because once you get to this time of year, usually if you're having concerns about whether somebody's like fully bought in or not, you start to hear about them, talking to other staffs and scheduling visits. I don't hear any of that with Emory Williams. So the fact that he's super quiet doesn't necessarily mean he's not convinced to come to Miami. So I'm still fully expecting him to arrive and probably as an early enrollee to get that first spring practice under his belt. Let's talk a little recruiting. Folks, I think that I am confident enough, and I'm like 100% on these because I don't drop them very often. I don't have to drop them. But I think I'm confident enough now to drop a Donno ball, my version of the crystal ball. I'm going to drop a Donno ball for Rueben Bain to the Miami Hurricanes. I have reason to feel very good right now that Rueben will be picking the University of Miami whenever he makes his choice. It's going to be at some point in December. This is all building on what we began speaking about yesterday. We did a show on this yesterday, with an Auburn insider logging a crystal ball for Bain to the U. And we know Bain's primary recruiter at Auburn, and Auburn being the primary competition for Miami here, Coach Rock Bellantoni was not retained by Hugh Freeze, and I think that is definitely affecting Bain's recruitment. And I think there's more signs of Bain trending to Miami, and I'm feeling good enough to log a Donno ball for Bain to the U. And what a season, what a high school career Rueben Bain is having. I mean, Miami Central, they're now the number 1 ranked high school team in the entire country. They're 12-0. They're heading into the state semifinals now against Lakewood. They're trying to finish a perfect season. And Rueben Bain, best player on that perfect team, 26 sacks this year as a senior. 26! A lot of guys would like to have 26 sacks over 4 years. That's a year for him. I think he had 19 and a half last year. He's got 26 sacks this year as a senior. I don't know how he's only a 4-star, right? Because we talk about certain players that, like Joshua Horton, who's been trending to Miami. How is he only a 3-star? How is Rueben Bain only a 4-star? This dude is one of the best players in the country, legitimately. He is a Miami legacy, as we know, and he's an ambassador for South Florida football. And that's why I think it's so important to get Rueben Bain locked in to the University of Miami. Even if he won't end up being the top ranked recruit in Miami's class, because he won't be ranked above Cormani McClain and Francis Mauigoa, I think Rueben Bain is the most important recruit in this class when it comes to where he plays, who he is, where he's from, and everything he brings to the table. So fingers crossed, my friends. The Donno ball is in for Rueben Bain to the U. Just so you know, there is starting to be some legit buzz on 5-star quarterback Dante Moore not being 100% on his Oregon commitment. For the last couple days, I've been seeing, like everyone has been seeing it, some of the buzz about him potentially flipping. And I've been saying it for the last couple days that I've had no real evidence that Moore might decommit outside of, Dillingham leaving Oregon to become the head coach at Arizona State. but there is now a growing sense that Moore's recruitment could be opening up. And this is what I talk about, guys. When I said that in the case of Emory Williams, you don't really hear or see like any evidence that he's opening things up. And that's why I think he's pretty solid to Miami. With Dante Moore, there's starting to be a little bit of buzz that he might be opening things up. This is a 5-star quarterback out of Detroit, Michigan. Miami was on his short list before he picked Oregon. So if things are opening up, I would expect Miami to be aggressive, since this staff never gives up on anyone before National Signing Day. Now, there's definitely more buzz for Michigan State than there is for Miami, because that's, the local in-state school that's also recruited Dante Moore really, really hard. So, if he were to decommit from Oregon, it's certainly not a slam dunk to Miami, but I think this is a player that Miami would certainly make an effort for. And speaking of buzz on decommits, there's a lot of buzz on, and somebody asked me about this in our live chat yesterday, and I didn't have an answer for it yesterday, but I have an answer for it today. 5-star safety Derek Williams out of New Iberia in Louisiana, New Iberia Westgate High School. This is one of the best players in the country. Derek Williams, this is per On3. This is a big story on him. He is remaining silent on his recruitment as the early signing period approaches. He's telling his high school football coach he intends to wait for the end of the season to evaluate his options. Now, he's a Texas verbal commit. So if you're talking now, you want to wait till the season to evaluate your options, but you're already committed somewhere, that's not a great sign for the team you're committed to. They write, Williams, who is an On3 consensus 5-star safety, has had a standout senior season and has helped lead his team to the state semifinals. He verbally committed to Texas way back on June 27th, 4 days after the Longhorns landed Arch Manning, but has been presumed to still be open to overtures. Westgate head coach Antoine Ryan told Kane Sport that Williams told him he wants to wait until the end of the season before he firmly chooses a school. So that tells you he hasn't firmly chosen Texas if he's waiting until the end of the season to reevaluate. So Miami needs safeties. They need safeties in the portal, and they need more safeties in recruiting, right? I mean, I like Antoine Action Jackson a lot, but Miami just needs more quality bodies there. And you also, it's been confirmed, Al Blades is hitting the portal and Avante Williams is hitting the portal. We're still kind of waiting and seeing what happens with James Williams. So Miami could be losing a lot of safeties in the portal, and they weren't super deep at that position group to begin with. So we need all the safeties we can get right now at the U. We're going to take a look at some of the odds and ends, guys, courtesy of Bet Online. Keep it locked right here to Locked On Canes. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. So I want to take a look at some of the numbers for the conference championship games this weekend, brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered, get it, this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. So Friday, this episode is a Friday episode. So if you're watching this on Friday, we still are several hours away from USC versus Utah in the Pac-12 championship game. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This is Utah's game. Some of you are going to say Utah's going to win this game. They already beat USC this year. Here's the thing. That was a home game for Utah. This one is the neutral site. I do believe USC is the better team than the Utes, and I don't see them losing to Utah twice this year. So I think that the fact that Utah, who had a 1-point win at home against USC this year, the fact that Utah are only 2.5-point underdogs in this one, which means USC is only a 2.5-point favorite, I think that's a big opportunity to lean to the Trojans tonight. I think USC is going to win this game by probably closer to a touchdown than that 2.5 points that they're favored by. So I really like the Trojans this evening. The over-under is 67.5. That's a pretty high number. I'm probably either staying away from that or going towards the under. I mean, even for Pac-12 football, 67.5 is a pretty high number. But I definitely like USC minus 2.5, or even if you're not like big in on the spread, maybe you think about USC minus 145 on the money line. But I think USC minus 2.5 at minus 115 is probably the better way to go there. So let's see, ACC championship game. That's going to be Saturday night at 8 p.m. I'm looking at the number here at Bet Online. This line has held firm for the last several days. I don't think this line has moved at all, and I'm happy it hasn't moved because if you haven't placed a wager yet on this, I think there's an opportunity. Clemson Tigers -7.5 against North Carolina. North Carolina has the better quarterback. They've got the more prolific, better ranked offense, but Clemson is the better football team, significantly better defense. And, they have a lot of offensive talent. Shipley is an absolute stud. And you never know which version of DJ Uiagalelei is going to show up, right? Because he can be a turnover machine, but he's also a big-bodied, dual-threat quarterback who can run you over because he's huge. You make a business decision every time that guy runs, whether you're going to tackle him. So I think based on just how well North Carolina's offense has played all season, they're going to score enough points to make this interesting for a while. But I think Clemson's going to win this one by probably 10 points or more. So I like Clemson -7.5 in this game against North Carolina. And I don't know. I wonder about 63.5. That's the over-under. That's a pretty high number as well. I could maybe see going over on that because North Carolina's defense is just bad, and Clemson's secondary has had moments this year where they've struggled at times. So I don't know. I may sit that one out, but I would probably lean a little bit to over 63.5 if you were so inclined to do so. And so, yeah, those are the games that I was most interested here. You also, of course, have SEC championship game between Georgia and LSU. This is a tough one for me, though, because the line is it's gigantic. Georgia -17.5 against, a Jekyll and Hyde LSU team. Like they never should have lost to Texas A&M, but I kind of feel like LSU has enough talent to keep this one within 3 scores. So maybe I would lean to LSU +17.5 there. But that's just such a big, because obviously Georgia's way better than LSU. For my money, Georgia probably the best team in the country, but at the same time, are they really 18 or more points better? So that's what I'm looking at Bet Online. They have you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. All right, guys. It's going to be a busy few weeks coming up. I'm already kind of mentally preparing myself to not sleep a whole lot, like between December 21st and 23rd during the early signing period. We'll see about the transfer portal period because I know Miami's going to be active bringing players in. So it's going to be a really, really busy month. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. We're going to keep you covered all recruiting season and all transfer portal season long. Make sure for your next listen, you check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes, part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.